Hello and welcome to the Ruth MacFit podcast. I'm very, very happy to be here with you today with half a cup of tea. And on today's podcast, I really want to chat to you about feeling great in midlife, of course, because that is the goal, right? To feel great, not just to achieve whatever goal, it's to feel great. And I know that when I asked you on a poll in Instagram a little while back, the best thing about being at this age, a lot of you came back and said that the best thing about being 40 plus is that you care less about what others think. And I find this interesting because I also have a score app where you do your midlife habit score. And in that, I noticed a lot of people were saying that they're constantly comparing themselves to others, or I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of women at this stage of life, and they'll often be putting their life on hold for others. So I thought, actually, there is that tension there between not caring so much about what others think, but also still bending over backwards to do things because of how we want to be seen. And so let's dive into what feeling great at this stage of life can actually mean. Now, I want to make it clear here, caring less about what others think doesn't mean that we have completely stopped people pleasing. Now, I would say that I definitely care less about what others think of me at this stage of life, but I jotted down some hidden signs that we are doing things for the sake of appearances or approval from others. And I am guilty as charged with a lot of these, and I'm going to read some out to you and see if you're shouting out loud like, oh no, I do that, because I think sometimes things are just so ingrained, and it's good to recognize that. You know, you might be somebody who is making sure that that house is tidy because you don't want to be seen as being messy or lazy, even when it's people coming over that couldn't care less, and you're exhausted. You're still doing it. I even tidy up for the cleaner, because I always say that it's better that she spends time cleaning than tidying, but it's probably because I don't want her to know how messy that we actually can be. It could be that you are trying to go above and beyond for the school, whatever sale they're having, and you're baking extra food for school events or maybe visitors coming to the house because you feel like it would reflect badly on you if you don't. You would never just go and buy something from the shop. And can I just say, I am somebody that used to do that more, but would still do that. I mean, I used to make amazing cakes for the builders when the house was being done up. Like, they started doing a bake-off and rating the cakes I was making. They proper tricked me into doing this. But I wanted to be that person that was doing it. But it was taking a lot of energy. It could be that you're turning up at your workout class, your group. You're feeling tired and sore. And in your head, you're like, I'm going to take it easy today because I'm not feeling great. But no, because you don't want to be seen as slacking or not trying hard enough, you push through anyway, feel rubbish afterwards. It's like, I've written all of these about myself. No. It could also be that you wear clothes that don't feel comfortable, or they're not things that you would want to wear anymore because you're worried that people would think that you've let yourself go, or that you start saying yes, or you're always saying yes to every invite, even when you actually want to spend a night in, because you're worried that people will think you're antisocial if you're always saying no. That's something I'm actually better at saying no now. It's like picking the things. It's like no crap cake. And I'm going to have nice times that I'll really enjoy with friends and so on, rather than feeling like I've got to meet up with everyone all the time. It might be that you're even subconsciously curating the ideal life and what you want it to look like on social media. You know, putting up that perfect picture where your kids are smiling, they've got their arms around each other. There's a reason why my children's pictures are never on Instagram. They would not be smiling at each other. No, they don't want their pictures on Instagram. That's fine. That's up to them. But anyway, it might look like the perfect family life, not the one where there was arguing to get them all lined up like that and the chaos around it. If you're doing that, it's a sign that you do care. And a lot of people are doing that. So that's something worth bearing in mind when you're looking at other people's photos. You only know that snapshot in time. It could be that you are taking on more at work or at home because you don't want people to think that you can't handle the pressure. You want to be seen to be on top of everything, even though you are running on empty. All of that whole thing that I've just talked about, anything in that list, that is a lot to carry in your mind. And And all of those things can lead to you feeling burnt out. We think we stopped caring about what others think, but deep down, we're still doing all of these things for others. When people come to me, yes, they want to feel great in midlife. A lot of people will feel like the thing that's going to make them feel great is losing weight, losing body fat, being thinner, And it might be that they felt better in the past when they're smaller, and it might be that they will feel better again when they feel smaller. But it's not just going to be the number on the scale that is making them feel better. It's more likely that the reason they associate being thinner with feeling better is because of the behaviors around there, the things that they were doing, the fact that they were moving more, that they were focusing on sleeping better, that they were eating in a way that felt good, saying no to those extra social evenings and the things that drain them. And they had a bit more belief in themselves, a bit more purpose. So many women, when I start working with them, they will be so focused to begin with on the end goal, but they miss how important the process is and how feeling good often comes before we get to the goal, not just after. And if we don't take time to enjoy the journey, then it's really hard to get to that end goal. There will be wins happening along the way. That's why we talk about non-scale victories, things that aren't related to that. And those things can actually start to happen really quite quickly. Energy can increase. You're feeling better in yourself. Your mood improves. Your skin clears up. You feel calmer. There's so many things that are so important and are all part of feeling great in midlife that come just from the actions we're taking each day, rather than what the number on the scale says. And I got myself caught in a bit of a perfectionist thing the other day when I was heading out for a run. And it's funny because I've always say to myself now that my running is different than it used to be. Now the intention is to always come back feeling better than I did when I headed out. But I was due to go on my brunch run. My brunch run, for those of you that don't know, is on a Saturday. I will run to our local town, and my husband will come in with a change of top and so on and meet me for coffee or brunch. It's about 9.25 miles, and I love it. And there are so many reasons why I love it, which I might expand on in a minute. But on this morning, I was starting to get this cold, but I could feel that I felt a bit slower and a bit more tired. And I had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm not going to be as fast as normal. I'm going to struggle a little bit today. Maybe I won't go. And I couldn't believe, actually, when I looked back on it, that it nearly let it talk me out of going at all. And I think maybe it's because the week before I'd been away, and the week before, so it'd been a couple of weeks since I'd done the run. So maybe it was just almost giving myself permission to not try because it'd be easier to not go. And then I reminded myself that I can always walk. Who'd have thunk it, Ruth? You don't have to run the whole way and run yourself ragged. I don't have to hit a certain pace. Just because my quickest time is that does not mean I need to get that every time. So I popped my shoes on and I had a little word with myself and I went anyway. And it was at a point where I was running across the moors on this off-road section, and I looked around. I was like, oh my goodness, it's so lovely here. And I thought, I'm going to stop and walk. I need to talk to Instagram, because who does that? It was because I realized that was what feeling good in midlife is about. It's about taking the pressure off, knowing that not every day is going to be a zinger, but actually getting out and doing what you can, doing something, not to prove anything, just because it feels good to move and to be outside and do something for me, no one else, for me. And that feels good. I was reading something recently. I'm going to read you the name of the book because I know I'm going to mention it again. So it's probably best that I mention the name. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And they said in this book, I was literally got back from dropping my son off earlier and going for a walk. And it said that when we're consciously observing our old patterns, we're no longer fully being them. And the reason it stuck with me is because the moment we notice that we're doing something, whether it's emotional eating, snapping at the kids, people pleasing, overcommitting, any of the things I've mentioned previously, we're creating a gap when we notice it, a pause, a moment of awareness. And that moment is everything. When you're just acting out of habit, it's automatic. It's like you're on autopilot. But the second you stop and say, oh, I always do this when I'm overwhelmed, Or I notice that I'm saying yes again and again when really I want to say no. That awareness is the start of change. Now, I talk about people being introspective, and that's it. It's because you don't need to be getting everything right straight away, but it means that you're no longer asleep at the wheel, right? You're aware of it. And when you're aware, you've got choices you can make. Progress isn't about perfection. And I'll always say to people, there is no failure, only feedback. And this is what I'm talking about. Because every time that you spot that old behavior creeping back in and question it, you are shifting something. You're no longer stuck. You're stepping back and saying, hang on, is this helping me? And then understanding what could serve you better. So if you are feeling like you're stuck in that continuous loop, then maybe the answer isn't doing more, but instead stopping and asking yourself, what is draining me? Why am I doing these things? And what can actually change here? I was speaking to someone recently and they said that they didn't understand why they're tired all the time because they don't even work. But there are so many more reasons than working for being tired. And I know I always used to think there was something wrong with me when I was working part-time and not working in theory the rest of the week. I still had young kids and so on. This was many years ago. And now I can look back and be like, I know exactly why she was tired all the time. It's often what we're carrying in our head, right, that's making us exhausted all the time. And I've got a bit of a list that I kind of want to go through again. And I want you to shout out loud if these are things that are going on in your mind each day, because I think at midlife, it hits harder. These things hit harder. It might be that you are holding everyone's appointments in your head, shopping lists, birthdays, meal plans, and your brain feels full already. This is why I quite like my Google Calendar because it helps with that, right? It could be that you're trying to meet everyone else's needs before your own. Now you've got kids, you've got family members, a partner, your work, your friends, and you're on call emotionally and physically, and that leaves no room for you to recharge. You could also be overthinking what others think. You know, you say you care less now, but worrying about how you're perceived as a mum, partner, colleague, or friend is also going to drain your energy. There's a lot of mental space being taken up. You're saying yes when you want to say no, and every single yes you say takes away from something else, even the small ones. And the worst bit about this is it often comes with that side serving of guilt or resentment. Then on top of that, you're the one that is noticing when the bin is full, the birthday card hasn't been written, the dishwasher needs to be unloaded. It's not often noticed, but it's relentless. And then you've got the other little things that you're thinking about in the day. What am I going to wear? What am I going to cook? What am I going to eat? When am I going to exercise? I need to reply to that message. I've got to pay that bill. And all of those little micro decisions, they build up and make you tired too. And then there's that whole thing about feeling like you want to be seen as that person that's got all their shit together, a smile on their face, making sure the kids are okay, even when they're not, and you're performing, and that is a lot to cope with. It might be that even your downtime is filled with scrolling or catching up or multitasking, and you're not getting an opportunity to actually rest and recover. Another thing is that we need to be aware of limits on our time and energy. We are saying yes to all these things, and we are doing other things as well, but we're not thinking about how all of this is actually going to fit. So we're just constantly saying yes, constantly doing more, and something has to give, and it's normally us, you know, us that's giving at this point. And I'm not listing all of those things so that you can go, well, yeah, that is me, and that's pretty rubbish, isn't it, Ruth? I want you to notice those things, as we spoke about earlier, so that you can be honest with yourselves and not judge yourself, and then have a little reframe with some of these things as well. And as I spoke about earlier, you know, an awareness that we're doing these things, the mental load we're carrying, is really important. But I also think how we talk to ourselves about them is important too. You know, have we created this mental load ourselves, being like, yeah, but I have to do that? Are we actually giving ourselves an opportunity to go, I choose to do that? You know, even that little reframe makes a difference. I know, dare I say it, with my mum, if I haven't seen her for a while and so on, when I get phone calls, I'm like, oh, I need to go over and see mum soon. And that feels like an obligation. If I can get ahead of it and go, hi, do you want to meet for coffee on that day? That choice makes it feel easier. It's like, I'm doing something about this. So getting ahead of it and making a choice, looking at the diary, so it's not just something, another little bit of guilt on your mind, is important. And reframing it so it's a choice and not something that you feel you have to do. It might be, instead of saying, I'm always the one that's got to cook dinner and having that element of resentment there, could you reframe it as, I'm fueling myself and the people that I love, and I get to choose the meals that make me feel good. This is a positive thing that I am doing for me. If you're struggling to take that moment to rest, you're feeling guilty because you think that if someone sees that you're resting or taking a nap, that you're lazy. Can you reframe that and remind yourself that rest is productive too, and that when I rest, I recharge, and I'm better at everything else when I feel restored. And it could also be that you make the task more enjoyable. I know that I always used to say that I didn't like washing up. And actually, our dishwasher broke a little while ago. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like it when I have to do it. But I actually realized that washing up is something I can enjoy. It's making it that choice. So for me, when I'm washing up and I've got headphones on and I'm just in that quiet space and I've told everyone else, don't you worry about it. So I'm already feeling good because I'm like, no, you guys, it's okay. I've got this. They've toddled off into the other room and I get time alone. I get time alone and I can just wash up in quiet, in peace. The kitchen's tidy afterwards. It can feel good. But if we're doing it feeling like it's me again, of course it's going to feel pretty rubbish, and we're carrying that mental load with it. And I want to be clear here that reframing doesn't mean that everything is great. It just means that we're making tasks feel less heavy, and that can free up so much mental space. That book I mentioned earlier, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I'm going to mention that a little bit more again here. Something that was mentioned was that often that inner disquiet will be bigger when there's a larger gap between how we're feeling and how we want to be perceived. I've spoken a lot in this podcast so far about pausing, reflecting, the mental load we're carrying, that busyness that we have going on in our brain. And I know for me, whenever I get that feeling of inner discomfort, disquiet, I know that it's a sign that I need to find that calm. I've been chasing the to-do list and I'm not looking after my own needs. And when I feel like this, I know that it's important to stop. So I might do that for a short amount of time, but I'm not very good at not moving, not doing something. Meditation is something that you'll hear again and again is so good for you, but it's something I have really struggled to commit to. So I feel like for me, that might be the next stage because I am good at self-reflection and so on, but I should probably do it for a little bit longer. I said should. I get to. I have an opportunity to for personal growth, right? So if you're like me, maybe you could join me on this tricky journey. But let's start, right, by asking ourselves some big questions. And you can write these down. Grab a pen and paper. Now ask yourself, what matters to me right now? What do I say I value? And am I living in a way that reflects that? And I think that's a big one. We can so easily just off the top of our tongues say these things we value. I value my family. I value this. But are we spending time with our family? Are we doing things that show that? Because if we're not, that could be where that feeling of stress and discomfort is coming from. Where in life do I feel like I'm just going through the motions? And here's a biggie, biggie. What would I be doing more of if I was less worried about what others would think? Being in a line isn't about perfection. It's just closing that gap between how you're showing up and how you want to feel. And it starts with honesty, not judgment, accepting where you are and being kind and honest about what is actually going on. You do not have to change everything overnight, but just noticing where something isn't quite feeling right, where it's feeling off, is the powerful first step. If it is because of what other people think, then go back to what I told you with the Mel Robbins book and let them. And then ask yourself, why does it really matter? It could also be that, is that actually what they will think? Because often it's not. So if I can ask you to take one thing away from this episode today, let it be this. Feeling great in midlife is not about being thinner or being perfect. It's more about energy, awareness, and doing the things that make you feel good, even if they don't look the way they used to. You're not the same person that you used to be. And you can ask yourself, what's draining me right now? Where am I adding pressure that doesn't need to be there? And what would give me energy today? What would feel good for me today? And if you do go for that slower run or take some time to nap for 5 minutes for yourself, then know that those small acts add up. They are the work. That is part of the process. Thank you very much for listening. As always, feel free to share this with a friend who might need that little reminder that midlife can be bloody brilliant in our own way when we're doing it in the way that works for us. I will speak to you next time. Goodbye.